thanks for doing that. It's always the fun picture. Now I want to invite Liz Markey with Two Bear Capital to say a few words to all of you. She's an amazing woman. So many of you already know her. But like she said, she's so excited to come to this event because there are constantly new women doing amazing things in this state, and she wants to meet all of you. So if you don't know her, I encourage you to come up and connect with her. And with that, she's also on the Montana Chamber Board, and so I would like her to say a few words.
Thank you, Candace. And again, what a rock star. This was really a gleam in my eye 5 years ago when I joined the Montana State Chamber Board. And since that time, the board has greatly diversified. We have lots more women on the board. Courtney Kibblewhite-Brown, or Courtney Brown Kibblewhite, and Nancy have both served very well as two chairmen. First time in the history we've had a woman follow a woman. And we've only ever had one other woman chair the board in like 70 years. So lots have changed, but this is your call to action. We need you. We need your voices, we need your opinions, we need you to share your experiences, and we need you to be members of the Montana Chamber of Commerce. Everybody has a beautiful pamphlet in front of them with a QR code that tells you more. Membership is very reasonable. And the Chamber is supporting some really important initiatives in childcare, in entrepreneurship, youth entrepreneurship, infrastructure, business policies, tax laws. So education, it is the state's #1 and oldest business advocacy group, and it needs a lot more females in the mix. So I'm gonna please ask you to really consider a membership in the Montana Chamber. And I have one other little favor to ask. My boss gives me a budget just for Montana to support women because he knows that that's why I work, and it's my deepest passion in life is to help women build wealth and self-determination. Today is his birthday, and I am going to, on the count of 3, I would like for you all to just say happy birthday, Mike, and I'm gonna send him a video, and I can't think of anything that he would love more than that. So.
Do you want me to video it with you, with them all behind you?
Okay, if you want to.
Yes,
well,
sure.
no, I don't have to. Okay, you can.
Yes,
all
I
right,
can.
ready? Okay. All right,
Let's do it.
1, 2, 3.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. So as Liz mentioned, child care policy initiatives are very important to us, and we started talking about them last year. Tony Rosanova, who is also on our board and our president-elect, has been here, and his daughters Cora and Hannah Rosanova, a New Rose Consulting, have also been helping out. So, it's a family affair at the Montana Chamber. But with that, I would love to ask Sheridan Johnson Hoyer, who is our government affairs specialist in spearheading our child care initiatives, along with Caitlin Jensen, who's the executive director of 0 to 5, to join us on the stage, and they're going to give the update on child care policy initiatives happening in the legislative session right now. So, ladies.
All right. Sorry. We
Watch me get
Sheridan,
settled.
Yeah, we had to get all settled and get our cough drop. Sheridan and I have caught the Capitol crud, so we both have a little scratchy voices and are going to be nursing cough drops and water as we're up here. But we really appreciate this opportunity. There's so much happening at the Capitol around early childhood in general, and we feel really honored to be able to talk more specifically about childcare today. So I'm Caitlin Jensen. I'm the executive director of 0 to 5 Montana. We're an organization that's been around for about 5 years, and we focus on early care and education, policy, advocacy, and then we also have a contract with our State Department of Public Health and Human Services to support childcare growth across the state through business entrepreneurship. So if you know of anyone who wants to start a childcare business or expand it, please reach out. We're all over the state and really love to work with community partners and employers and a lot of different folks. And I'm also joined here by my colleague, Callie Parr. She's our Tribal Early Childhood Policy Coordinator, and again, just so honored to be here. I'm also the mom of a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, so very much in the childcare world right now, but I'm gonna pass over to Sheridan to introduce herself.
Thanks, Caitlin. As Candace said, I'm Sheridan Hoyer. I am the Government Relations Specialist at the Montana Chamber, and that means I get to lobby a lot. And then last session, we did a lot of tort reform, work focusing on business climate, and I asked my bosses if I could work on something tangible. So that's how I ended up in the childcare space, working on early care and education. Get to do a lot of work with some federal partners, with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and the Bipartisan Policy Center, looking at how we can create solutions, and got some cool news from them this week too that we'll allude to. But we at the Chamber focus on things in the legislative session that focus in our Envision 2026 strategic pillars of business climate, entrepreneurship, workforce readiness, and infrastructure. And I think that childcare fits really firmly into both infrastructure and workforce readiness, but I get to do a lot of our workforce policy there. Just moving right into what's happening at the Capitol, I'm sure you're somewhat in tune because you're in this room, but for those that don't know, we just wrapped up transmittal, so we're on transmittal break as of noon today with the House of Representatives finishing their third vote. So that means that anything that doesn't have a revenue allocation with it has to pass one side of the House, so it has to get through committee, a second reading vote, and a third reading vote before day 45 of the legislative session. And then if it doesn't make it to the other House, then it's mostly dead. So we have some bills we'll chat about there and some other bills that do have revenue attached to them, so still some time to engage on those. Do you want me to start, or do you want to? Great, moving right through. We only got 15 minutes up here, but we could talk for hours on this, so feel free to ask any questions later. The big news this week is that we've been really working closely with the Department of Health and Human Services to kind of protect the rule package that they've been working on for over 5 years, with 700 folks and stakeholders giving input at different levels to kind of streamline the really thick rule package. And they objected to it in the interim because they were differing opinions on precisely what that should look like on some really specific pieces of a big 95-page rule package that would have really made it easier to understand what the regulations were and to keep kids safe, right? Like that is a key point in all of this. And make it accessible and affordable for folks to access childcare. And so we did, so we're working closely with the department to make sure that those can go into effect at the end of the legislative session, because there was a formal objection, and so it means that if they change it at all during the legislative session, then those rules don't go into effect. But if we manage to keep them from being changed, which we did successfully do this week, and so those should go into effect at the end of May, and those stakeholder input was included. And then we, with 0 to 5 and their lobbyists and their great team, have been focusing on a tax credit package. I think overall, the desire to do something on childcare is growing, right? People are hearing it, employers are hearing it, the Montana Chamber is involved in it, but they're still not quite sure exactly what to do there, and so we're inching away at it, working away at it, and we appreciate all of your support as we do that with this event and more. And so with Senate Bill 321, that's being carried by Josh Kastmeyer, it has a child tax credit, and so that's not child care tax credit, but just if you have a child, a refundable tax credit for $1,200, and then a worker tax credit, because we know that child care employees are really valuable but don't get paid a lot, and burnout is really high, which creates more trouble in the industry. And often they're really, really passionate about the work that they do, but they can very rarely afford to stay in this business. And so that's a refundable tax credit for $1,600, and then an employer tax credit, which is where the chamber really fits in. So a refundable tax credit for employers that are helping with child or dependent care in some way of $5,000 a year. So that'll be coming up. Stay tuned. Get on all of our mailing lists, and we'll keep you posted.
Yeah, thanks, Sheridan. So again, we're just going to be very high level and talking about a few bills. I'll just mention that when we started session, there were, almost 260 bills that were related to early childhood that we started tracking. And a handful of those were really specific to childcare, but as Sheridan said, we're really focused in on both bills and policies that are going to help increase access to quality, affordable childcare, because we know that's what parents need, and we know that it's so critical to the infrastructure across communities. And so that's what we're really focused on is a team, and with a lot of other supporters too at the Capitol, and with many of you. We've talked to some folks who have been on different calls and who have advocated, and we just can't thank you enough for stepping in and sharing your advocacy, because it really does work. Just a couple other bills that we wanted to highlight. We're also in the process of working on an opportunity, which is really exciting, but it would be a bill to set up the mechanism and potentially also some funding for an early childhood trust fund. And what this would do is it would allow us to have some additional flexible funding that could go towards the services around childcare and early childhood in general. When we think about early childhood and childcare, we also think about opportunities for school districts. What does that look like in early education? What does it look like for childcare to be able to expand in communities to really meet the needs of unique family and community needs? And so, so really hopeful for what that could look like. And as that starts to come together, we would love for you to all join us in supporting that to move forward. One thing that is, I think, important to know about childcare funding in Montana is that we are heavily reliant on our federal dollars that come into the state. Our state puts very, very little funding into childcare in general. And so this is a big opportunity. The fact that there are legislators signaling that we could be ready for this is a huge opportunity. So we want to seize on that. And then another bill, actually two bills that are moving forward through the process are focused on the childcare workforce as well as around childcare affordability. Representative Carlin, who's out of Missoula, he has a bill, House Bill 456, which is focused on childcare workers. And so what this bill will do is it will allow for, if you're working in childcare, you have a young child, the payments for that child will be covered through the childcare subsidy program, which is called Best Beginnings, which is really exciting. There's a pilot right now that the Department of Public Health and Human Services is running, and it's shown really great outcomes in terms of reduction in turnover for childcare workers, which is important for all of us who rely on childcare to make sure that there's more stability within our childcare workforce is critical. And then another bill that he's pushing for is for House Bill 457, and this is a bill that would increase the eligibility for that child care scholarship so that more working families would be eligible for funding, for subsidy to help cover the costs of child care. We know that child care on average is about $28,000 for families in Montana. And about 66,000 Montana families are not fully participating in the workforce because of a lack of childcare. So all of these bills, thinking larger, more systemic around the childcare trust fund, what that could do to really help us with short and long-term planning and funding is critical, as well as some of these short-term funding opportunities too that could really help us to address some of these challenges. So there's a lot of really exciting things happening, and we hope that you can stay engaged and connected. Do you want me just to go into this a little bit, or do you want to?
I just had a thought that, we have heard some thoughts or some mutterings around the Capitol that just giving money to a specific industry is socialist, all the things that way, right? We do work at the Chamber of Commerce, and from our perspective, it seems that the childcare industry is fundamentally broken, and COVID did not help that in any way, shape, or form. And so really looking at what we can do to get it back on its feet, create a sustainable industry long-term, and with the trust fund, something that can adapt to the needs of a separate pot of money or a separate place that can adapt to needs a decade from now and what the childcare industry looks like there. I got married in the last year, so my joke is that I would like to help solve the childcare problem before it becomes my problem. I live in Denton, so there's not a lot of people there to start with.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. And it's been just so phenomenal to get to work with so many passionate advocates in the halls of the Capitol, and the people that know so much more than I do. We've been working with 0 to 5 pretty closely for about 2 years now, and just so grateful for all of their expertise and the steps we're taking in the right direction.
Yes, thank you. I know, and we so appreciate the partnership with the Chamber, because we would not be able to do a lot of this work without the partnership of the chamber and the members, and Sheridan is just such a rock star at the Capitol. So I can't give Sheridan enough kudos for all that she does, because she is such a fierce advocate for these challenges and opportunities. So it's a great partnership. Like Sheridan mentioned, we've worked really closely also on some federal initiatives, which helps us to inform what is possible in our state. And then since we work across different communities and with a lot of different members, it helps us to think about what is strategically, what are we ready for right now. And so another thing that we work on together is the Family Forward Montana initiative. If you're not aware of what that is, you should check it out. We have a website. But it's a way for you to look for different family-friendly policies and practices so that you can think about the policies that you might want to incorporate today and things that you can start to think about in terms of what you can do, as well as longer-term and bigger systems change that you can be a part of. I also, if it's okay, just wanted to also let you know that if you are an employer and you're interested in engaging more in childcare issues, we would love for you to not only be a part of our advocacy list and join Sheridan and I and so many others in helping to connect and coalesce around these issues. We also wanted to let you know that through a contract that we have with the Department of Public Health and Human Services, there's an employer-sponsored grant. This is really a flow through the work that we partnered with on Family Forward, and we are looking for one more employer, so to really round out our cohort. And so if you're interested, it's a grant. It would help to support you in different aspects around family-friendly practices, whether it's on-site care, near-site care, or different employer assistance programs. But these are the types of programs that help us to inform what is working, so that next session and in future sessions we can help to advocate for these different strategies. So just invite you to join on, welcome anyone to work with us, and we have an advocacy list, as well as every Thursday at noon you can join a call and we go through all the different updates of what's happening in early childhood and specifically around childcare as well. So it's a great way just to stay engaged, and if you join the advocacy list, we'll let you know if there's alerts so that you can quickly and easily take action as well.
Yeah, and on the employer grant, I'm really hopeful that in the next interim, we see what happens with that money. We see the ROI, and we get to come back in 2027 with hard data to convince legislators why this is so important and how employers can be part of the solution. We're getting our 1 minute over here, and we're just so grateful to be able to share this with you. The Chamber also has our calls on Tuesday if you care about early childhood and everything else happening in the Chamber world at the Capitol. But thank you again for your time. Sure. I got news that we have time for 2 questions if there's anything we can help address. Yeah. I heard you had a bit of a busy week. Oh, we got one back there.
Yeah, I was the lady with the baby last year. There were a couple of us. You know.
With the employer grant that they're working on? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so on the tax credit bill, the school district could get that employer grant, but you would receive a child tax credit if you had a child, but I don't think you'd qualify. I think it's focused on early care and education. Workforce would receive that tax credit.
Yes, exactly. And one thing that we could think about, though, is if for school districts, there are some other bills, we didn't touch on them, but are more focused on access to around early literacy and early learning. Also, the employer-sponsored grants, school districts can also apply for those too. So if you're interested in on-site or near-site childcare, that's also an option. But like Sheridan said, with the tax credit package for the childcare workers, if they are attached to a school district, then they would qualify.
It's really interesting to look at what messages land at the Capitol. As a lobbyist, we know the ROI of dollars spent on children 0 to 5 even greater than the ROI on dollars spent in, not that they're not important, but the return on investment is a larger percentage when you put that money into early care and education, but that doesn't really tend to land when we talk to legislators. We're focused on the here and now, and so we're hoping to shift that perspective just a little. One more, anybody?
We've had some conversation the last couple days about some success across the state with private-public partnerships, and this sounds to me like exactly what you're doing. What has been a program that you've seen good success with that you would love to replicate in Montana?
That's a great question. I mean, the first thought that came to mind was around this, the trust fund bill, because what we've learned from other states is that it could create a funding avenue where there is an opportunity for more public-private funding that could go into the fund that could then be reallocated or distributed. So it could come in the form of grants that could go to communities or individuals that might say, I want to start a childcare, or we as a collective want to work on addressing childcare, and we could access a grant through a type of fund like that. And we've learned from some other states like New Mexico, they've gone through a process that we're also in the process of right now around a comprehensive fiscal analysis. So it's basically looking at what is the true cost of quality, accessible childcare in Montana. And a lot of other states that have done this, like New Mexico, they have been able to use that data to then go to their legislature and say, look, this is what the problem is, this is the data, and to be able to set up a trust fund that helps to put in place short and long-term funding, also where private dollars can come in to merge together to help really reinforce and build that partnership. We've also seen that happen where at the local level you could maybe have a match or some other opportunities. So it's like an outlet, like it's a way to create a pathway in for more leveraged support and funding. But that's one example that comes to mind.
Yeah, and on that trust bill, we're kind of trying to game it so that even if the Appropriations Committee slashes the amount of money we want to put into it, there's still that mechanism that exists. So if there is money at some point or private money that wants to go into it, we can still call that a win. And then that's, I think, the value of our time with the Early Childhood Business Advisory Council with the U.S. Chamber is that even the bills we put forward this time, there's experts on the federal level who work in all of these states, and I'm like, hey, what's the right language for this bill, or what has worked in similar states? And we get to connect with Alaska and South Dakota and Idaho most specifically, and more often than the rest, because we have such similar climates. But thank you.
Good thing I talk loud. If you could please join me, there we go, in thanking the ladies. They drove down last night and this morning just to be here with us, so we really appreciate them and all the work they're doing in the Capitol. You jump to the stage. As they come down, I'm inviting Nikki Geisler, who's the Executive Director of the Montana World Affairs Council, to the podium.
Hi, everyone. As Candace said, my name is Nikki Geisler. I have the absolute privilege of being the Executive Director for the Montana World Affairs Council, which probably many of you in this room have no idea who we are. But we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing global education opportunities to communities and schools around the state. And we're on a mission. We're on a mission to bring opportunities to every single student. We're on a mission to bring much needed resources that teachers are actually asking for. And we're on a mission to bringing thought-provoking discussions to communities around the state. And I say this, we're an entire statewide organization. You have no idea where you will find me on any given day. I might be in Glasgow, I might be in Joliet, I might be in Lambert, I might be in Whitefish or Missoula, or even here in Bozeman. But I want to tell you a little bit about my week. We started off on Friday with a speaker coming in from India. And her name is Beena Nabrim. And she came to Whitefish, Montana to do a sold-out dinner and speaker series with women. It was sold out, and every woman by the end of the night was crying because it was so inspiring to listen to her story of being an indigenous woman from India and how they are changing the world through conflict, how they are bringing peace in a time of conflict. And then we drove down to Missoula, where we brought 500 high school students to the University of Montana, 20% of those students coming from 5 Indian reservations, and we spent 3 days in a cultural immersion global education conference where we had speaker events and dance programs, and we ate international food. It ends in a 100-question trivia competition, and the grand prize was a 2-week trip to India, a trip to DC, and scholarship money to attend the University of Montana. But the coolest thing about this entire conference is that it's 100% free. So we work all around the state. We work in communities to figure out how to fund these schools. So we fund their transportation, their lodging, their substitute teachers, additional meals, 3 to 4 nights of hotels. There's no registration fee, which means there's no barrier. So all of these students from 31 different schools around the state can participate completely free of charge. And then we came here to Bozeman. And I have the honor of being on the planning committee for this incredible program. And when I started with this committee, I really wanted to recognize the fact that there's so many women internationally that are making an impact on our world. Because that's part of our mission, is bringing the world to Montana and Montana to the world. But there's also so many women here in Montana that represent Montana internationally. And I just very quickly, if you are a woman and you represent Montana internationally, can you please stand? That's you right here in the front. Where's Katie? Right here, she's already standing, she knew it. These women, Rachel, come on. These women work tirelessly to represent Montana internationally. And I say that because I have an intern in Lambert, Montana. Thank you guys. And I have an intern in Lambert, Montana. And I made her go through every single European country when I had this idea. And she was like, there's only 6 women that represent Montana. But in Montana, we're almost all women that represent Montana internationally. So it's incredible. And every single Consul General woman accepted our invitation to come be here with us today. And I just really quickly, just want to leave with one thing. I am the 2nd youngest woman executive director, well, actually just 2nd youngest executive director out of 93 World Affairs Councils. And I've learned a lot because I continue to learn every single day. But I've only been executive director for less than a year. But I want to stand on this. The things I've learned the most is that when you support your partners and you get to collaborate and you get to lift them up, you thrive. And also, when you get to share your resources, I've learned that your resources double or triple. And when you ask, so many times just by asking, you are given things. And then you are able to completely double your impact. And I just want to say, it is an honor to be a woman in Montana, working to bring opportunities to every single community in this amazing state. So thank you so much.
Okay, so we finally have these amazing ladies on stage who have Montana in their territory. Many of them, it's their first time in the Treasure State. 3 of them with me tomorrow will be heading to Yellowstone National Park to experience America's greatest national park, as well as our first national park. I know there's folks from Glacier in here. I love Glacier too, but Yellowstone is my favorite. So it's kind of that UM-MSU rivalry thing. It's good, it's co-opetition. But today, for International Women's Day, we welcome these 5 ladies. I will share, we also had the Consul General from Poland with us. Unfortunately, she had to leave this morning, and so she sends her regards and wishes she could be here. In addition to, Nikki helping us with the Montana World Affairs Council to make this happen, I also want to recognize Katie Wilcoxon, who was just standing as a woman representing Montana abroad, but she is with the Montana Department of Commerce. Mandy Rambo is our acting director of commerce, and she sends her regards as well. She wanted to be here, but transmittal was pushed off a week, and so we had a lot of folks who are doing things up in the Capitol not able to join us, including the Secretary of State, Christy Jacobson, who spoke last year and has sponsored the conference this year, and also Sarah, Montana Department of Labor and Industry Commissioner, Sarah Swanson. There we go. My brain is dead. But with that, I would love to begin our panel, and we'll start with each of the ladies introducing themselves and their country, giving a little tidbit about that country so that we have a frame of reference of their country as we hear about it, and highlighting 2 to 3 of the industries that are critical to their economy. So with that, and there's no particular order, so whoever wants to start first, we can start this way and come this way, and then we'll switch.
Hello, wonderful ladies. My name is Lucia Sava. I'm Consul General of Romania in Los Angeles. I was appointed in November 2023. I have 11 states in my jurisdictions, and Montana is one of them. I'm really glad to be with you here because I have the opportunity to talk, of course, about my country. I don't know how many of you've been until now in Romania. No?
Oh, I see some hands. Woo!
So we are in Europe, and I have a really great country. We don't know to promote this country, and I'm trying, in my capacity as Consul General, to do that, because we have to learn to promote our country. We have hills, we have mountains, we have Black Sea, we have many things, and we have Dracula Castle, if you know what I mean. And we have Nadia Comaneci, and we have Hagi, and we have many, many Romanians, intelligent Romanians. So I'm really glad to be here with you. Talking about industry, we are very developed, and we are waiting investors for the industry in defense, in agriculture, in green energy, and so on. We can talk if you want after we will speak here. So for the moment, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gry Henriksen. I'm the Norwegian Consul General in San Francisco. I cover 13 states, and it's my first visit to Montana. I'm really, really happy that I've got the chance to come here, and I'm so impressed with this state and all the powerful women I've met over these past few days. It's been really a true inspiration. I couldn't think of any better way to celebrate International Women's Day. Norway, really, I would say coming to Montana feels like coming home in so many ways. The snow yesterday, the mountains, and just I think the culture, the people, hardworking, wonderfully friendly people, and so it's really great to be here. Norway has a population of 5 million, which is a little bit more dense than Montana, which is rare for us in Europe. The size of the country is about the same. Our main industries, I would say, is anything to do with the ocean and anything to do with energy. And when you mix those two, that's where we really have our strength. So anything sort of maritime, transport, aquaculture, offshore oil and gas, offshore wind. And we also do a lot of onshore energy production, and a lot of it, or most of it, is renewable. So that's also where we sort of have our strength in building collaborations with our partners overseas. I was told to say a fun fact about Norway, and I think the most appropriate thing to say to this audience is we are known for having our wealth built on oil and gas production, but our finance minister, who was prime minister a few years back, he said that the real wealth in this country was built by women joining the workforce. So almost all our women are part of the workforce, and that's where we have our greatest strength, and that's where we built most of our wealth. So I'll stop there.
I think that deserves a round of applause. And she did Pilates Plus with Sam this morning for the first time ever. Oh, button up, is it not working?
No, I think it was off. So good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you, and thank you, Nikki and Katie, for having invited us, and me in particular. It's my first time in Montana, and it's a wonderful, like you said, Grace, it's a wonderful opportunity to come on this occasion and to meet all the wonderful women that, not all the wonderful women we can meet in Montana, but such a nice crowd. So thank you so much for having me. So I'm the Consul General for Belgium. My name is Sophie Hotat, and I've been based in LA since 1 year and a half, covering also 13 states, first time in Montana. And I don't know if I can jump to fun facts first, but I should maybe talk a little bit about Belgium. I understand that there might be Belgians in the room. Yes! So, great. We'll catch up later. So, Belgium is not a small country. I can get sacked if I can say. No, I'm joking. But joke aside, we are a middle-sized economy, European size, a country of 11.8 million inhabitants, and we compared yesterday, I think, 1/12 of the size of Montana, so we're a bit stuck together. We keep ourselves warm. Our economy is mainly, we have a service economy, of course, but the major sectors of our economy are pharma, logistics, chemicals, food and beverage. Maybe that rings a bell. Food and beverage from Belgium. So, yeah, really happy to be here. Fun fact, I don't know, we have, a lot of countries have 3 ambassadors in Brussels, among which the US, so 1 ambassador to NATO, 1 ambassador to the EU, and 1 ambassador to Belgium. So it makes a lot of diplomats in Belgium. So I guess we'll talk about later about the diplomatic life. So thank you again for having me today.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Renee Pea. I'm the Consul General of Croatia in Los Angeles. We cover 19 states from LA, so everything from Texas up to North Dakota, Alaska, and Hawaii. So it's quite a lot of states. But I'm really proud to be here because we also cover Montana. This is my first time here. And I would like to thank all the wonderful women who made this happen. Nikki, Katie, Candace, and everybody else who I cannot mention right now, but I'm sure a lot of women were involved in this project, so congratulations and thank you so much. Regarding Croatia, Croatia has been independent for the last almost 35 years. We had a homeland war from 91 to 95 for our independence from Yugoslavia. We won. It was very difficult to fight the Yugoslav National Army, which was the 4th strongest army in Europe at the time. But we managed, and we are now very successful. We're a member of EU and NATO. And we have the second highest GDP in Europe right now, so highest GDP growth in Europe right now. So it's been going really well. Our main industries are defense industry, IT, but mostly tourism. We have 20% of our GDP comes from tourism. I'm sure you've all heard of Croatia. I get that a lot here. When I was here in '94, during our war, everybody knew Croatia only from the war. And now, whenever I mention Croatia, everybody says, oh, beautiful, wonderful beaches. So it is very beautiful. I hope you can all come and visit. We are also famous for inventing the tie. Yes, it's true. It's true. And also maybe for you who are here today, Dubrovnik is one of the most famous cities in Croatia. It's a beautiful walled city. It used to be an independent republic who was the second country in the world at the time to recognize the US, which I think is also a nice piece of information. We have great wood that we export as well, and Venice was, for example, built on that wood. So Venice was built on Croatian wood that Venice Republic took from Croatia. And also Croatian stone from Brač was used in building up the White House. So a couple more than a little bit of tidbits, but I thought this would be interesting for you. Thank you.
From a Game of Thrones, huge fan of Game of Thrones, and I actually went as the Mother of Dragons for Halloween, so I had white hair to hear. You know, I will definitely be coming to visit. And I'm Croatian background. Next. And Polish, which we were chatting about that before she left for the airport, so please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Tammy Sandhu. I am the British Consul General. I'm based in San Francisco, where me and my team, a male member of my team is sitting right at the back, if you're wondering who the one man in the room is.
I invited him up front. He didn't want to come. He's hiding.
He's precisely where he should be. I'm kidding, Tim. This might say something about the culture of our consulate. But look, it really is an honor to be here. This is actually my second visit to Montana. I was here just 6 months ago. Yep. So, but didn't get to come to Bozeman. So when Nikki invited me, I thought, my gosh, absolutely yes. And when Nikki invites you to anything, I mean, there's no room to say no. But no, seriously, I think to come and to speak in front of this room of incredible women and to meet all of you is really an honor. So much so that I brought my 7-year-old daughter with me. So you might see her in a minute. Because I know that she will be inspired too by all of you. But look, let me say a little bit about why I think the UK is great. So look, we're a population, we've grown a little bit, largely due to immigration. So we are nearly 70 million, we're about 68.3 million people. I would say we have really, so where we were largely a manufacturing and an advanced manufacturing economy, we have very much pivoted to a services and retail economy, and of course London being one of the financial capitals of the world. But I think what is really interesting, and certainly interesting for me and my team, given where we are located in the Bay Area in San Francisco, is the way in which technology is really becoming a fundamental part of our economy. So we have had a new Prime Minister come in about 8 months ago now, who has put AI and an AI-driven economy very much at the heart of our agenda. I didn't know when I moved to San Francisco 4 years ago that all I would talk about is AI, but it turns out that is, I mean, I should just be called the Consul General for AI. But
joined the panel yesterday.
I should have joined the panel yesterday. But look, we are the third largest tech economy in the world after the US and China, and set to grow. Fun facts. So I'm going to take the privilege of giving you two, possibly three. my first fun fact, which, because it's just fun, is that, so we're known, iconic London buses are known for their colour and being red. But my fun fact is actually they weren't always red. And so before the 20th century, actually, they were different colours depending on the route, and that's how you knew which bus to get on. So that's one fun fact. But actually, that was sourced from ChatGPT. My actual fun fact, and my really relevant fun fact, given where we are in the world right now, and I should say I've spent the last 48 hours not participating in this conference because I have been engaging with all of the brilliant quantum and photonics companies. I was at MSU yesterday seeing the incredible EngineWorks facility in QCore there. So my fun fact actually is that in the 1840s, Ada Lovelace, who you may know, a phenomenal British female scientist, wrote the first ever computer algorithm. And while she wasn't recognized for that at the time, she is now very much credited with being the world's first computer programmer. So we come full circle.
That is awesome. Okay, so we'll start with you and go this way this time. And the question is, what do you believe are the next frontiers for women in business in your country? And how can policy and diplomatic relations support these goals?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a huge
You had them
question.
in advance, so.
We did.
Did you go
Is that coming through?
Yeah,
Yep.
there you go.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And I have lots of kind of answers to this question. I think a really obvious answer to this question is to expand women's leadership in STEM and in some of the industries that we have been talking about, the AI economy, the tech economy, the green economy, all of the things that are driving our collective economies. We've got to be able to expand women's leadership and opportunity for women in those fields and increase women and female representation in those fields. I think the other thing that we need to do is sort of try and promote policies, and I can talk about these maybe a little bit later, about some of the things that we've done in the UK. So promoting investment in women-led startups. It's something that me and my team in San Francisco spend a lot of time doing. In fact, when I came in, I said, DEI initiatives should not be standalone initiatives. They should run through absolutely everything that we do. And so we focus a lot on trade and investment, but we ran, for example, one of the first ever Black female founders delegation to the Bay Area. So I think, promotion, investment in those kind of initiatives are things that we as the international community as well can really kind of take a grip of. My view, by the way, of what my job is, which I think is really relevant to this question, is to insert ourselves as a government where otherwise there would be a market failure. And I think when it comes to women's representation in business, what we experience, and the figures tell us this, I don't think I need to bore you with them to kind of elucidate this fact, but what we are experiencing is a market failure, and that's why people like us work so hard to make sure that women are represented. The other one I might just mention, Two more. One related to that. So the venture capital world is the one where I really spend a lot of my time. So we know that the figures for venture capital into female founders is appalling. When you extrapolate that to women of color, it is even more. It's even worse. So I think the figure roughly stands at 0.01%. Of venture funding goes to Black female founders. That can't be right, given the percentage of the population. So I think we can push for more women on investment boards and leverage more capital for female entrepreneurs. And then the one that's related to that, I think, is kind of closing the gender pay gap. It's something that, again, we've worked really hard to do in the UK with a huge amount of success. We now ask companies to report their gender pay gap. As government entities, we have to report our gender pay gap too. But I think on the other 2 points in making sure that there's more women in senior leadership roles, but also capital funding, there's still more work to do there.
Renee?
Thank you. This is going to be a very hard act to follow, especially because I think we'll probably all agree on this question or this answer. So I just want to give my few cents because I have worked for a first female president of Croatia. I have worked for, while I was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I have worked for 3 different ministers of foreign affairs who are women. And also we had a first Croatian prime minister who was a woman. And every time we had political leadership who were women, things improved. So we are 51% of women in the world generally. Please vote for women. Vote more women in. And when you have more women making political decisions, then you'll have more women sitting on boards. You'll have better initiatives when it comes to women, just in general. So that's my first tidbit. Secondly, I think that we should just let women do their thing and of course support them, but I feel like women are so capable and self-sufficient. If you just let them do their thing, they'll be great. So for instance, in Croatia, we have a AI initiative. It's a nonprofit for AI development. It's headed by a woman. We have a Women in Tech initiative, and it's also all women who are helping each other develop more initiatives, better initiatives, helping them use the AI or the tech that they have or that we have in better ways. And I can talk a bit about that later. Also, when it comes to research and development, we need more women. And I'm very happy to say that actually Croatia, which is very surprising, I was doing research on this and discovered that we have one of the first, I had to read this, so I'm sorry, there's a lot of information. So we are first in number of scientific publications authored by women in the EU. We are 4th in female participation in research. We have the 2nd place overall in EU research and development when it comes to women. So all of those things are really, really important. It just has to transfer into actual, business opportunities and women being leaders in their companies, on boards, and leading the innovation. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sophie?
Thank you. It comes harder and harder, so sorry. So of course I concur, and probably going in the same direction as you. We have identified, I don't know if it's ChatGPT, but it might be. I asked a trainee to do the first research, and I agree with what came out of it. So the 3 frontier challenges would be indeed increasing the number of female leadership and entrepreneurship. So in Belgium, we only have 1/3 of self-employed are women. And talking about female leadership, I completely agree with what you said. In the parliament in Belgium, we have 42% of women elected. We come from a distance. Women were able to vote in 1948, but some were elected before in the 20s because of First World War, etc. But it took a lot of efforts to reach that 42%, which is still not optimal because women represent 51% or 52% of our population, so we're still under what should be. So 42% of women, to reach that goal, we had to put in place some compulsory measures, no quota, but the political parties are forced now to present as many women as men candidates on the lists. after we put in place that measure, we realized it was not enough, because it's not enough to be on the list to be elected. So now we have imposed an extra rule saying that the 2 first position has to be not the same sex. So it opens possibilities, and it made us increase the number of women being elected. So it's a good trend, but it's still lacking to reach full effectiveness. And then another female leadership aspect is, and it has been touched upon, the C position, the CEO, CFOs, etc. So in 2011, we passed, I think it was a law, but it was not compulsory for large companies, so the listed companies, to reach at least 1/3 of the board members being women. That was 2011, and today we are far from it. Today, 16.7% of board members of the largest companies are women. And if you see the difference between board members and executive committees, no one company match the 50% women in both categories. Some have even no women at all in executive committees. So, there are some lobbies now suggesting that we might have to put a quota to force companies to go in that direction, as it is so important. Another element, like you said, is STEM, women and girls studying science. We are not very good, so we have to go and check how you do it in Croatia, because we only have 27% of female students in STEM, graduating in STEM. And then a third aspect that is a frontier, and that it relates very much to what we have just heard earlier, is work-life balance and affordable daycare. So in Belgium, we have actually, I didn't check the figures, but I think we have one of the shortest maternity leave in Europe, but a very old one, so it has been several generations that we have paid maternity leave, and maternity leave should never be considered as an accident, as sickness. So it's not a sick leave, it's a maternity leave. It's really important. But ours is still short, so it is 15 weeks, 1 week before the birth, 14 weeks after the birth. So when the baby is 14 weeks, he or she goes to daycare. So it's really important to have daycare and to have affordable daycare. And still, we do not have the same level of, how do you say that? When women, work, full-time work. So women still lag behind men for full-time work, meaning that, there is a children and a woman cannot go to work. If it's a choice, that's fine, of course. But sometimes it's not a choice. So affordable daycare and parental leave and opening the parental leave to both parents is our priorities and continue to be a priority, although we have different types of daycares, and daycare that's also, you pay in function of what you earned. I heard earlier that someone mentioned socialist. We are Western European countries, so a lot of socialism in it, so that's true. So meaning that if you are unemployed, you can put your kid at daycare, you won't have to pay, and you can have time to find a job, because that's a kind of a vicious circle. So that's the third element. Also, like you said, Tammy, the gender pay gap. I read, but I don't know if it's true, that we are good on that, with only 5% difference. So we are good, but it's not even equal pay. So, still work to do indeed, and a lot of challenges for the future, which is good in a way to have challenges.
So I was going to talk about something nobody has mentioned so far, STEM. No, so I think it's our biggest challenge in Norway is getting girls to do STEM education, and that is, I think, something that we should look at together, because it seems like it's an issue everywhere. And since this part of this question is about diplomatic relations, maybe that's something that we could sort of get together internationally and look at. I read that only 20% of women, 20% of tech leaders are women. That's a very low percentage. So we need to get all the girls out there and participate and become leaders in tech. I think spending a lot of time these days thinking about our future with technology and how technology really sort of goes into everything in our society. And I think it's so important that at least half of the people who are deciding how that's going to happen are women, because we bring a different value set, and we just have to be there. The other thing, so my colleagues mentioned a lot about policies in our countries, and we can maybe get more into that later as well, but I think in Norway we changed the expression from maternal leave to parental leave, which has been a culture changer. Both parents should be part of bringing up a child, and that might as well start right away. So we share the parental leave between the moms and dads, and it also makes an impact on how we are treated in work life, because both have to take leave, so both kind of fall behind if that's what happens when you take leave. And both learn to, take their part of responsibilities at home, because I think even though Norwegian women have been in the workforce for many, many years, they also still take the biggest part of the work at home, and that just doesn't really help. And I think I wanted to, I'll get back to the family policies maybe later, but women sort of being part of forming leadership culture and building networks with other women, and sort of building strength in leadership and creating a culture for leadership that is not a masculine culture, but a feminine and masculine culture. I think we can both bring values to the table that are worth sort of bringing us forward.
So, Gry, before we move on, and correct me if I'm wrong, so when I lived in Greece, I had a fellow expat who was there. Her husband had been transferred to Greece, and she had a 2-year, I don't know the correct term, it wasn't a sabbatical, but a leave from work where she was guaranteed her job when she returned. And then in Copenhagen, when I lived there and was working, they had an amazing program where when women went out on maternity leave for a year, their job was posted as, here's the job, and it said maternity leave, 1-year contract. And so again, they were given a year to be with their child and guaranteed their work back. And it was, I'm like, this is brilliant. Why aren't we doing this? So I don't know if I stole your thunder on future family policy discussion, but can you just speak to that a little bit? Because I think it's so innovative, and it's not anything that I've ever heard of us doing here in the United States.
No, it's true. We get around a year. Parental leave. Could get a little bit more if we go down a little bit on the wages. It's supposed to be shared between the parents, so you can sort of choose in the couple who takes which part. When I went on leave, my husband wasn't working because he had to leave his job to go with me abroad. So I got the whole year. It's important, right? To know that you have your job back when you're done, and you can spend that time with the child, and then daycare will be available at a reasonable price once the child is around 1 year old, and you can go back to your job and continue.
Awesome. I'm sorry. Thank you. Go ahead.
Full paid. Yeah.
So in Romania, we are having 2 years parental, yes, full paid. And in the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, The policy is the fathers have to stay in the last month. They will stay with the kids. It's very hard for them, believe me. They're like, oh my God, why that? Who had this idea? So I think we all agree that we are still living in a world of men. I didn't told you I have an experience in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of 19 years. 19 years, I was struggled. Why? Because when I arrived to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, this was my dream since high school. I decided I have to be a diplomat, I have to represent my country, and all the steps that I made, it was in this path. So when I arrived to Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I had that dream. It's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We are all equal, and it wasn't. And I was like this, on heels, and I was on suits, and everybody was like, who is she? What's happening? And I was like, I'm like that. I'm very good in what I'm doing. And since then, I had 2 faculty, one in international relations, one in the law, 2 master degrees in international relations, and 1 PhD. And other courses, mediation, negotiation, everything. But I didn't did that for them. I did that for me. Because every single time when I will have a conversation with a man, and he will look at me like, who are you? I'm gonna say I'm Lucia Sava, and I'm very good in what I'm doing, so let's talk. It happened here, me as Consul General, I arrived here, and in a discussion with a very high-level authority, he was like, oh, you are the Consul General of Romania. And I was like, yeah. And I don't show my age, so let's talk. So when they found out that I have 2 boys, 15 and 9 years, they're like, with their jaw down. So the idea is that I think we have to take to our meetings also demands. And I think we have to bring them. And I think we have to stick together. Because sometimes we're saying we are staying together, but we don't. And yes, we can talk about policy, we can talk about all my colleagues said. In Romania, I was talking with an ambassador and he was saying that, oh, Lucia, in 50s, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you couldn't see a woman. If it was a woman, she was secretary. If she wanted to be called ambassador, Madam Ambassador, she will try to get an ambassador to get married with her. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not agreeing with that. But this was back then in the communism area. But it is not like that right now. I know it's still hard, even though some of us will say it's not. It is. So I think every single one of us had the power to do something, to break the ceiling, yes. And what you're doing here, Nikki and Kenny and Candace, is great. So let's do more events like that and to bring the men here because we need them to support us. And just a little story. So my husband, we are together for 22 years. And he was, every single time when I was announcing him that I'm gonna do another faculty, another master degree, and he was like, oh my God, again, don't do that, you're good, no, you don't need it. I was like, yes, I'm gonna do that. Every single time since I get birth, he was like just coming home saying, yeah, who's my little boy? After that, he was just looking at his problems, I don't know, not staying with the kids. And I say, okay, I'm good, no problem. But now, since I'm Consul General, and we arrived here in USA, he had to stay with the children. And guess what? It wasn't easy. And I said to them, yes, my darling, I know that. For 14, almost 15 years. So good luck. You have more to stay with them. So thank you.
So our next question, not everyone has to answer, so just whomever would like to speak to this, but you all seem just, the camaraderie amongst you is lovely. As you said, we women need to support one another and lift each other up, so you model what you say, so thank you for that. It's been a joy to kind of meet you individually and then also talk to you in groups, and I look forward to our time tomorrow. But so culturally and regionally, with your countries, what are some barriers that you see that are prohibiting women from going into leadership positions as the world is transitioning? So, and how do you think they can be overcome with your background and expertise?
Can I begin?
Yes.
So I think talking about cultural, back in the history, we're talking about the woman goes to the pen, right? So I'm coming from a family of 5 children. My mother, she is very smart, she is very good looking, but she had to stay home with us, and it wasn't easy for her. So every single time when I saw her like cooking every single day and staying at home and being unhappy, I said, okay, I'm not gonna do that. And when I met my husband, I said to him, you will never see me cooking. After 2 years of relationship, he was like, oh my God, but you have to cook, you're a woman. And I was like, you can cook. And after 5 years, he was like, but are all? What's happening? Only salads? I said, I'm so sorry. You will not see me cooking. But I can tell you, on COVID era, he had to show me cooking. After 18 years of relationship, he was like, oh my God, finally, is the time. I'm gonna do pictures. So it was just a short story. I think in every country you can have those kinds of cultural back in the history, and we have to give them a part. We have to be stronger, even when it's not easy, because many of us have children, and it's harder when you have children. You don't have to take care only of you or your partners. You have also the children, so you have the school and everything. But besides all the policy, besides all the programs, education, and everything, the important thing is for us to be stronger, and to be stronger together. Thank you.
Tammy, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I would love to build on some of these incredible points from the Consul General from Romania, because you struck a chord with me. So let me just say, like, my husband does all the childcare and makes all the meals.
Hey, you're a lucky woman.
But that was a conscious decision we had to make, which sort of speaks to some of the other points, which was, we have great childcare provision in the UK, which allowed me to take 15 months off. And then, by the way, and then you get 15 hours of free childcare once you go back to work. And if both parents are working in full-time employment, that rises to 30 hours for the first 3 years. I mean, it is incredible. Having said all that, when we moved to the United States, suddenly our childcare bill was going to be $3,500 a month. And that was unaffordable on a civil servant salary. And so we had to make a really conscious decision that one of us, and it couldn't be me because it was my job, so it was a conscious decision that, you know, I knew the outcome to, which I think all of us women are really good at, was for that he had to not work to allow me to do what I'm doing. So I just wanted to add on that. This question is about regional and cultural barriers. I guess I might just speak a little bit from personal experience on this. So I come from a town in the UK called Leicester. It is right in the middle of the UK. I am so proud to come from Leicester because it is the first city in the UK to be majority minority ethnic for lots of different reasons. And so my parents were the first generation immigrants. I'm the first person in my family to go to university. But my dad was an entrepreneur. My dad was he was the true entrepreneur. Forget those guys in Silicon Valley. You know, he started a business by he sold a watch at a market stall, and that grew into an incredible business in the Midlands, and then went into real estate. And so for me, I could have gone into business. But what I did not have a field of vision for was diplomacy, not at all. And I say this because just to bring some of these things together and to maybe tell you a couple of anecdotes that highlight the point. I was really privileged to go and serve in India, so I'm of Indian origin. It really was the privilege of my life. My parents were like, hold on, we left India to come to the UK to give you a better life, and now you want to go back to India and serve for the British government. Like, we don't get this, but fine, okay, whatever. But the interesting experience there was, so at that time, I was married. So all my mail, all my post was addressed to Mr. Tammy Sandhu, without exception, for 3 years, because it was inconceivable, right, that a woman could be the Deputy High Commissioner, like that just and that is a cultural issue, and even friends of mine from the same culture would question themselves, and if that's the one thing that came out of it was I got my own culture to question why it had these preconceived notions of who could and couldn't hold certain positions. So I think it is really important that all of us stand up and represent the industries that we do. My husband, whenever we went to like diplomatic functions, we'd roll up in the car and the door would always be opened for him and never for me, because of course it must be my husband that's the dignitary and not me. And this used to drive me wild. Now, I mean, whatever. So I say this to say it is really hard. And one of the things, or two things that we can do, so one is to call it in, not call it out. I hate, call it out doesn't work for me, but call it in. And I'm going to use an example from today, actually, where, so Tim is still standing there, poor guy. Yesterday, we went to see a company, and the senior exec at that company was talking and talking, but he never looked at me. For the entire conversation, and Tim did a really lovely thing and, moved himself next to me and kind of called it in to say, this conversation is with her. So just to say, the one thing we can do is really call it in. That takes bravery. It really does. It takes courage to create that culture. The other thing I would say, and I say this because I used to chair our race and ethnicity network for the foreign ministry and looked into this and looked into all of the data behind this and did lots of initiatives around this. The single most effective thing that can to help is sponsorship. So mentorship's great, but it doesn't propel somebody. Having somebody else more senior to you in a leadership role to stand up and say, they are great, I have worked with them, they have these skills and talent. That is the single most thing that can create the right culture and that can really propel women. It has worked for us within our ministry. So actually the one thing I'm so proud of is the fact that, because I can say all of this, but we have to project that ourselves, and we have to be able to project that as the UK on the international stage. Well, now we do. 50% of our ambassadors around the world and well, until like a few weeks ago, but all of our P5 ambassadors, so the permanent members of the Security Council and the G7, so the biggest economies of the world, were all the UK representatives were women as of 6 weeks ago. It changed 6 weeks ago, actually, with our ambassador to the US. Real moment of pride, but what that took was senior leadership, sponsorship of women. So there is nothing else in my experience that works. Everything else helps, but nothing else helps shift that dial.
So we'll do one last question before we finish up and open the floor to questions. Looking to the future and being hopeful for what is to come for women globally, what do you see in the next 5 years as a goal or a milestone for your country to achieve for the state of women in business? Please, Sophie.
I'd love to actually concur with what you said. It relates so much what you said about going somewhere with a male colleague and the interlocutor never thinks that we are the one they should talk to. It's so, like when my husband is so upset when he gets called Mr. Hotat because I did not change my name. And he's so upset when that happens. And that happens, of course, all the time. So, yeah, that was... it's between, because we are among ourselves here. and talking about women ambassador, I think you're perfectly right. And also you mentioned it, I think, Renee, that since 2020, for the first time ever, we have had one female prime minister and female minister for foreign affairs during 5 years. Thanks to that, the proportion of women's heads of missions, and I'm not talking about ambassadors, I'm including the consul generals, went from 15%, 1.5, to 19%. And if we go to ambassadors, I was reading some recent statistics. Belgium is the worst in the EU countries. We have 12% women ambassador. In all Europe, 2 countries do worse than us, Belarus and Russia. Russia has 0.75% women ambassador. That's always interesting. And the US do very good. I checked the numbers. It's like we do 12%, and the US, I think it's 37%. So it's far from your question about the future and the 5 years. But maybe when we look forward, we have a government. We have a new government after our elections recently. We have a center-right government, and in the government document that sets the goals for the 5 next years, we have a whole set of elements about gender promotion, about diversity, and about indeed trying to increase the level of participation of underrepresented minorities and underrepresented groups, because women are not a minority, and also trying to work on some bias and sometimes statistics, looking at where are women underrepresented. For example, one example that's mentioned in that very important document for our 5 next years is underreporting of violence against women by police. And so very detailed and very important elements that impacts women, impacts underrepresented groups, and the importance of supporting each other, launching and financing initiatives, and also sponsorship, mentorship, and gathering like this one where we can share best practices, share bad practices possibly also, and compare notes. And that's why we are here. That's why we came here. We came to Montana to have this discussion, to learn from what is happening in Montana, to help local business community, and to compare notes and have these incredible discussions. And maybe just one small thing, I'm sorry, it's because this year is an important year. We celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration, and it's platform or something. So it's about promoting women, and also the 25th anniversary of the Women in Peace and Security Declaration, both very important international commitments subscribed by 189 countries in the world, among which European, I guess UK, US, and but we still have work to do. Sorry.
Bree, go ahead.
Yeah, so Candace, you opened the lunch session with an interesting statistic. I think, how many years does it take at this current pace to reach?
5 decades, so over 50 years, according to the World Economic Forum.
Right, so obviously we need to do something, and so what do we need to do? In Norway, we had in place in 2023 a new law requiring all boards of companies that are listed to have at least 40% of each gender. And it's a requirement, you can't cheat on that one. We used to have it for like government-owned companies, but now we're taking it a step further to all listed companies. And then I think like small one-person companies, they don't have that requirement yet, but I'm sure it will come. So that is one way of making sure that there is gender equality on boards. It's interesting to hear my colleagues talk about what has happened when they've had women leaders, because it happened in my Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We had, for at least 20 years, there was like 25 to 30% women in leadership positions, being heads of missions, and everyone sort of agreed that that's as far as we'll get. We don't get any further, it's very difficult. But then we had a woman foreign minister, and whoops, all of a sudden we had 50%. It wasn't that hard. And the third thing I wanted to mention is women supporting women, and that's what we're doing here. But I don't know how it is here in Norway. It's not so easy. We women tend to pull each other down or not sort of help each other up, which is what men do all the time. Yes. So we need to be doing that as well, and building networks of support for each other, I think is really important going forward.
So in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Romania Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in this moment, we are having 54% of women. And I think 35% we are at the high level in departments and ambassador and consul generals. I had the privilege after a contest where we've been 7 persons on the post of Consul General of Romania in Los Angeles. I won, and I've been the first woman Consul General in USA. So I'm very proud that we are making progress. I can tell you that I had many stories in my experience. One of the stories that I was on a ticket to be General Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, now I think 6 years. And it happened that my nanny said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I had to go, I can't stay anymore. The little boy of mine is nonverbal." So she said, I don't understand him, so I don't have what to do. So it was from the short time. So I announced, I was 12 years advisor to the ministers. So I announced to the minister that for a period of time, unfortunately, I will be at home. So I was on that ticket, and it was a friend of mine in a very high position in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that said, I don't think she's prepared because she has the children, so I'm sorry. So this was the reason that I lost that job in that moment to be general secretary, and I had so many projects, and I said, okay, it's just a step. So I think it's essential to understand that if we are not sticking together, the men will support us, but the most important thing is for us to stay next to each other and to support us and to be unstoppable together. So thank you.
Ms. Julia Bryant has the mic over here. Do we have one or two questions from the audience? Wow, there we go. I see hands.
We obviously are having some change up in our country when it comes to DEI policies. And it's interesting to hear actual laws being put into place that recognize, excuse me, that half of the population is female. How do you have those conversations among people who are opposed to that type of policy where they say, well, you're just getting the job because it's a DEI hire? It's a very difficult conversation to have right now.
I'll let you pick who goes, so I'm not picking.
I'll try to have a go. I'm not sure I'll answer your question directly, but I was thinking, like, why do we have these policies in place? It's not just in order to have 50-50 men and women. It's because it's the right thing to do. So, and it's the right thing to do for business. It's better business to have women on boards and in leadership positions. It's better because we bring more diverse teams. It's not about just women, but diversity in general. More diverse teams come up with better solutions, and that's, I think, research has demonstrated that that is true. And so even though some people might be opposed to this, if you can talk to sort of the bottom line argument of making a business successful, I think that's maybe a way to go.
If I can add to that, not only is it the right thing to do, it's actually extremely important because it has been shown, there's research, that women in leadership positions actually move the whole society forward. So I don't know if you remember, there was a case when, I believe in India or somewhere in Asia, they had small business loans that they were giving to women, and they were minuscule. They were about $1,000. And it was shown that women who had their businesses, who managed with that money to grow their businesses, their whole country actually flourished because of that, because they moved the whole society forward with that. The same actually goes for women in politics, women in negotiations. We just add another level or another dimension to the conversation. We understand things a little bit differently. We take into account the whole of society, you know, our children, our communities. We do things a little bit differently. And there's research about how everybody benefits when you have women in leadership positions. So that's the answer.
And to add to Renee what she said, in my discussion every single time I will say, we are on the same level, but we, women, are better. Just simple better. Thank you.
I think we may have to end it with that. So if you can please give me a round of applause for these ladies. I do have for each one of them, Montana Silversmiths has sent a belt buckle. Lance Nearby from Columbus, Montana, has sent one for each of you. I also have one for your fellow Consul General from Poland. Yes, okay, wonderful. So we will give you those. And before we give my last comments, we are going to raffle the baskets off when I'm finished. Julia Bryant up here with, where is my, there she is. Nope, that's not her, that's Brianne. I can't see her. But anyway, they're gonna be up here calling out the numbers, so have your tickets out, and we will raffle those off. However, I have one closing remark quickly. As we close out our time here today, let's reflect on the connections made, the stories shared, and the lifelong friendships started. Again, March is National Women's History Month. We will move forward together because progress is never made alone. And with that, please save the date for March 4th through 6th, 2026 for the 3rd annual Montana Women in Business Summit. And if I could please have the committee members stand and also the Montana Chamber and Montana Chamber Foundation board members for a last round of applause for them as well.